So I think it's good we start with Surah Al-Fatiha. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, alhamdulillah rabbil alameen, ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, maliki yawm ad-din, iyaka na'budu wa iyaka nasta'een, ihdina as-sirata al-mustaqim, sirata alladhina an'amta alayhim ghayra al-maghdubi alayhim wa lad-dallin. Sadaqa Allahu al-aliyyul azim. أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين ولعن الله على أعدائهم أجمعين من الأولين والآخرين آمين يا رب العالمين. السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله وعلى الأواهي التي حلت بفنائك. عليكم منا جميعا سلام الله أبدا ما بقيت وبقي الليل والنهار ولا جعله الله آخر الأحد أحد منا لزيارتكم. السلام على الحسين وعلى علي بن الحسين وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين. Peace be upon you, O Aba Abdullah, and upon the souls who have gathered in your courtyard. Upon you from us all is the peace of God forever, for as long as we remain and as long as night and day endure. And may God never make this our last pledge to visit you. Peace be upon Husayn, and upon Ali, the son of Husayn, and upon the children of Husayn, and upon the companions of Husayn. Assalamu alaikum jamia wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. So this is the 10th in our series of sessions for these nights of Ashura and Arba'een on the subject of Tabyeen or clarification. This is the last part in the first series on Tabyeen, and God willing, we will be continuing this series during the 10 nights of Arba'een, God willing. As with our other sessions, such as those on patience, the lantern of the path, or the art of supplication, it is strongly recommended that the consumer of this, at the very least, review the previous sessions prior to consuming this one. This is because of the nature of the discussion and the manner of discourse that really requires each part to build upon the one that came before. This is so we can avoid confusion, misunderstanding, and any invalid assumptions that can lead to what would be the antithesis of tabyeen or clarification. While we do have a recap for each session, the recap is highly summarized. And to get the full nuance, the previous sessions will really need to be consumed, studied, and reflected upon. Nevertheless, if I can get a salawat, then we can move on with the recap.
اللهم صل على محمد
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجه.
So the previous session was a response to clarification. And in the previous session, we examined the critical stage that follows tabyeen or clarification, the individual and collective response to the clarified truth. We affirmed that clarification is not merely a transmission of information, it is a moral unveiling that demands a response. Through the Quran and the teachings of Ahlul Bayt, peace and blessings be upon them, we explored 4 archetypes of response. The first is the submissive believer, who accepts and obeys without hesitation. The second is the defiant rejecter, who opposes the truth knowingly. The third is the hesitant and delayed, who recognize the truth but refuse to act. And the fourth is the passive approver, who agrees silently but never aligns in deed. Among these, the most insidious is the one who claims loyalty without action, who praises the truth yet remains detached from its struggle. Their passivity is not neutrality, rather it is betrayal. As we saw in Ziyarat Nahiya al-Muqaddasa, even being pleased with falsehood while doing nothing to oppose it is enough to merit divine condemnation. The ideal response is wilaya, conscious, committed alignment with the clarified truth and its bearers. This is not a matter of slogans or sentiment. It is loyalty in word, in deed, and in sacrifice. It is obedience not to abstract ideals, but to the living structure of divine authority. But even this is not the final station. For many recognize and even respond rightly, only to falter later. The trials that follow clarification are subtle and severe. Betrayal does not always come from ignorance. It often comes after clarity, when the path becomes long, lonely, and dangerous. And therefore, in this final part of the first series of sessions on Tabyeen, we turn to the next chapter in this journey. What happens after the truth is seen and sided with? What are the tribulations that test our loyalty? And how do we remain steadfast, unwavering in the era of sedition? The war on truth does not end with its exposure. It continues through distraction, fatigue, fear, and worldly temptation. The next test is not whether we know, but rather whether we will endure. Please give me a salawat, and we move on to the main segment.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
So recognition is not the end. Even when the truth has been clarified, even when it is accepted and loyally embraced, the journey does not end. In fact, it is only then that the true tests begin. The Quran and the legacy of the Imams, peace and blessings be upon them, are filled not only with stories of those who rejected the truth, but with those who recognized it and still fell away. Deviation is not confined to the ignorant. Betrayal is not the exclusive domain of the misguided. The most severe betrayals in history came after clarity, not before it. In Quran, in Surah Yusuf, the chapter of Prophet Joseph, 12th chapter of the Quran, verse 106, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, "And most of them do not believe in God without also associating others with him." This verse does not speak of ignorance, it speaks of corruption after belief, of those whose initial acceptance becomes diluted, compromised, or corrupted by the influences of fear, pride, or desire. The Imam who clarified the Quran most sharply, Imam Ali, peace and blessings be upon him, witnessed this pattern in his own companions. In a single sentence, he revealed the cause. And this is from Nahj al-Balagha, and like I say in all of these sessions, there are detailed citations and references and footnotes in the write-up, and I encourage everyone to go through them. So Imam Ali says, how many an intellect is imprisoned under the command of his desire? Desire, not ignorance, is often what corrupts a believer after guidance. One may see the truth, one may affirm it, one may even love it, but when the desire of the self reassert their rule, the intellect becomes a prisoner, and wilaya is quietly replaced by convenience. This is why our greatest supplications, even from the purified Imams, include pleas for firmness and continuity, not merely for initial guidance. For example, in Dua Ahad, the supplication of the covenant, we are taught to say, "O God, make me among his supporters, those who defend him, who hasten to fulfill his needs, who obey him, who protect him, and who precede others in responding to his will." This is the voice of the committed, not satisfied with having seen the Imam, but begging for the grace to remain with him in every situation, under every pressure. And why is this plea necessary? Because some abandon the field after embracing the truth, because some turn away after joining the ranks, because truth, though it clarifies a path, does not eliminate the weight of the journey. In the age of sedition and ideological war, the danger is not only not knowing, it is knowing and then drifting. And so the question becomes, now that we have clarified the truth and responded to it, how do we guard ourselves from falling away? This is the question to which we now turn. So let us now first look at the causes of deviation. So why do people deviate after recognizing the truth? The answer lies not in a sudden shift, but in a slow erosion of conviction, a quiet internal corrosion that begins long after Tabyeen has done its work. Clarification pierces the heart, but the world does not let go so easily. the soul begins to make concessions. It still remembers the truth, but it begins to long for relief from the burdens that truth imposes. The causes of this deviation are manifold, but nearly all stem from a gradual surrender to the forces of comfort, fear, fatigue, and worldly attachment. Let us look at each one of these. Please give me a salawat and we proceed.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
So the first one is hubb ad-dunya, or love of the world. The most frequently cited cause of spiritual downfall is not disbelief, but excessive attachment to this world. In fact, the Quran warns in Surah Maryam, the chapter of Saint Mary, 19th chapter of the Quran, verse 59. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, "Then there succeeded them generations who neglected prayer and followed their desires, so they will meet with deviation." Desire is not always evil in its appearance. It may come disguised as opportunity, stability, even moderation, but it drags the soul away from the clarity it once held. The truth becomes a burden rather than a beacon. The second point, fear of loss or persecution. Many know the truth, but are paralyzed by fear. Fear of social alienation, fear of institutional backlash, fear of economic harm. They do not reject the truth, but they delay, they defer, or they distance themselves from it until they no longer feel its pull. This was the case of many in the Quranic narrative. For example, when Saul's army was tested with the river, only a few remained. In Quran, in Surah Baqarah, the chapter of the cow, second chapter of the Quran, verse 249, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, "They drank from it except for a few of them." The test was not one of knowledge. It was one of restraint, loyalty, and the ability to withstand discomfort. The third point, mental and spiritual fatigue. Enduring in truth is exhausting. Those who bear the burden of Tabyeen, or who stand with the clarified path, often suffer burnout. The path is long, the opposition is fierce, and the results are slow to manifest. Over time, the soul begins to crave ease over struggle, and fatigue is mistaken for wisdom. Imam Ja'far as-Sadiq, peace and blessings be upon him, described the subtle creep of hypocrisy into a believer's life. There is no servant except that some hypocrisy resides in his heart. But if he rises and sleeps each day doing what God loves, God, purifies him of it. Deviance begins when one stops renewing the struggle, when one permits the inertia of fatigue to override the demands of faith. The next point, social pressure and isolation. The truth often isolates. To stand with clarified truth means to stand against popular opinion, institutional inertia, and sometimes even one's own community or even family. The fear of being alone, misunderstood, or vilified causes many to slowly retreat, not into denial, but into irrelevance. This is why Imam Sajjad, peace and blessings be upon him, in his long whispered prayer of the devout, pleads, "Make me of those who are strong in obeying you in every time and every era." And this is from Dua Makarim al-Akhlaq, the dua on noble moral traits and acts pleasing to God from Sahifa Sajjadiyya. He does not merely ask for initial guidance, but for sustained strength in obedience, no matter what age or setting. These are the hidden forces behind deviation after Tabyeen. They rarely announce themselves. They do not shatter the soul overnight. They wear it down quietly, persistently, until it begins to prefer ease over truth, safety over sacrifice, and relevance over resistance. And so the battle begins, not of recognition, but of resistance against erosion. Let us now look at fitna as a divine test. Trials or fitan are not disruptions of the divine order. They are part of it. In fact, they are essential to it. They reveal the hidden, they sift the souls, and they expose the difference between truth professed and truth lived. The Quran speaks of fitna not as a punishment alone, but as a test of sincerity. In the Quran, in Surah Ankabut, the chapter of the spider, 29th chapter of the Quran, verse number 2, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, "Do people think that they will be left alone because they say we believe and they will not be tested?" The declaration of faith is not proof of faith. It is the entry into a trial that reveals its true weight. Fitna comes after Tabyeen, not before. It does not ask you, do you recognize the truth? It asks, will you stay with it when it costs you everything? This is why Imam Ali, peace and blessings be upon him, in one of the most sobering descriptions of communal testing said, and this is again from Nahj al-Balagha, the origin of fitna is the following of desires and the innovation of rulings. In it, the book of God is opposed, and men take charge over other men on a religion other than the religion of God. It's a very important quote. Here, the Imam unveils the anatomy of fitna. It begins in desire, matures in innovation, and spreads through illegitimate authority. In every generation, the same pattern unfolds, and those who once stood firm may find themselves slowly swept away. Fitna, therefore, is not a random storm. It is a divine sieve, separating the gold from the dross. The Quran confirms this explicitly. In Quran, in Surah Al Imran, the chapter of the family of Imran, third chapter of the Quran, verse 179, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, God will not leave the believers in a state in which you are until he distinguishes the evil from the good. This process is necessary, not optional. Without it, the Ummah would be confused by outward appearances, by pious slogans and respectable postures. Fitna unmasks all of that. It asks, will you follow the clarified truth when it brings hardship, not applause? In our own time, this sifting continues. Those who once stood with the truth may now seek neutrality. Those who once spoke may now fall silent. Those who once wore flags may now trade them for invitations to comfort. But the fitna was always coming, and its purpose is clear: to separate those who say they love the truth from those who are prepared to bleed for it. As the Quran says in Surah Muhammad, the chapter of Prophet Muhammad, 47th chapter of the Quran, verse number 31, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he says, and we will surely test you until we make evident those who strive among you and those who are patient, and we will test your claims. Fitna is not about exposing enemies. It is about revealing whether we ourselves are real. Please give me a salawat and we move to steadfastness is victory.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
If trials, fitan, are the divine sifting of truth and falsehood, then steadfastness, sabr, is the measure of success. It is not the brilliance of one's arguments, nor the intensity of one's recognition, but the ability to remain, to endure, and to continue that distinguishes the loyal from the fleeting. Steadfastness is the companion of truth in every age. The Quran never promises ease to the believer. It promises, in Quran, in Surah Al-Baqarah, the chapter of the cow, second chapter of the Quran, verse 153, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he says, O you who believe, seek help through patience and prayer. Surely God is with those who are patient. It is through patience, not popularity, not numbers, not immediate outcomes, not instant gratification, that divine companionship is gained. Imam Ali, peace and blessings be upon him, whose life was a symphony of endurance, said, Patience to faith is like the head to the body. If the head is cut off, the body perishes. This is not mere metaphor. The truth, once clarified, will inevitably invite hardship. And without sabr, the soul will bleed itself dry trying to escape the cost of its own recognition. This is why the du'as of the Ahlul Bayt, peace and blessings be upon them, are filled not only with pleas for guidance, but pleas for constancy. In Ziyarat Waritha, we call upon God to include us among those who remained with Imam Husayn, peace and blessings be upon him. We say, and make firm my feet upon your straight path. Likewise, in Ziyarat Aminullah, Imam Sadiq teaches us, make me firm upon the loyalty to your friends, enmity towards your enemies, and adherence to the sunnah of the seal of your prophets. These are not just pious flourishes. They are survival strategies. In a time when the clarified truth is under siege and fatigue whispers louder than conviction, the highest act of resistance is to remain. And history offers us examples. Ammar ibn Yasir, bruised and battered and aged, yet unshakable. Said Zainab, veiled in chains but towering over empires. Hura ibn Yazid al-Riyahi, one who faltered but then rose with decisive steadfastness, never turning back. Their greatness was not their mere recognition of the truth. It was in their willingness to stay with it until the end, irrespective of how bitter that end might be. Those who endure are not spectators of Tabyeen. They are its proof. They carry its light. And when the world forgets or flees, they are the ones who say, we were with you and we remain. These are the true partisans of truth, not only because they saw it, but because they remained loyal to it when others fled. The final plea, do not sell the truth. Now, there comes a time in the journey of every believer, after the truth has been clarified, after the ranks have been chosen, after the trials have begun, when the soul is offered a bargain. It is rarely framed as treachery. It may come in the name of pragmatism, maturity, even wisdom. It offers relief. It offers safety. It says, you've done enough. Let others carry it now. It invites you to sell the truth, not outright, but slowly and with subtle terms. The Quran describes this spiritual transaction in terms that should shake the heart. In Quran, in Surah Al-Baqarah, the chapter of the cow, second chapter of the Quran, verse number 16, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, they are the ones who have purchased misguidance in exchange for guidance, but their trade has brought no profit, and they are not rightly guided. This is not a metaphor. It is in fact reality. Guidance is not lost in one step. It is sold for social acceptance, for fear of controversy, for worldly gain, or for comfort in old age. And it is always sold after it has been recognized. It is never ignorance that causes this. It is choice. The tragedy is that the soul believes this trade is temporary, that one can return to the truth later. But by then the heart is hardened, the zeal has faded, the conscience has been silenced. Ziyarat Ashura teaches us to recognize this danger and to plead with God for the courage to never accept the offer. In Ziyarat Ashura we read, O God, make my life the life of Muhammad and the family of Muhammad, and my death the death of Muhammad and the family of Muhammad. This is not merely about love. It is about loyalty, a prayer to never depart from their path, no matter the cost, to live and die as they lived and died, clarifying the truth, enduring trial, and refusing to sell the sacred for the cheap. And so we end this part of this series with a plea that we direct first to our own hearts and then to our communities. Let us not be among those who claim to love the truth, but walk away when it becomes heavy. Let us not applaud the martyrs, but flee from their footsteps. Let us not recite the names of Ahlul Bayt, but abandon their stances. Let us not be among those who trade the truth for a moment of ease. For in this era, as in every era, truth needs not only those who recognize it, but those who remain with it until the very end. Please give me a salawat and we move on to the conclusion.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
The steadfast remnant. With this 10th session, we conclude the first of our journeys through the path of Tabyeen, the sacred responsibility to clarify, unveil, and defend the truth in an age of confusion, distortion, and ideological war. We have traversed 10 sessions exploring not just the meaning of Tabyeen, but its urgency, its targets, its methods, and the spiritual responses it evokes. We have seen that recognizing the truth is not the highest station. Remaining loyal to it, defending it, and enduring its consequences is the true measure of faith. But now a new question confronts us. Who carries the duty of Tabyeen? Whose shoulders must bear the burden of truth in every age and society? In the next phase of this series, which will resume in Arba'een of 2025, we will turn our attention to the specific responsibilities of the various agents of influence within the Ummah, within the community. We will examine the trust placed upon prayer leaders, khatibs, and pulpit preachers, the moral and intellectual duty of scholars, teachers, and seminary students, Hausa students, the spiritual and strategic role of youth in shaping the future, the leadership of elite women following the path and footsteps of Sayyidah Zainab, peace and blessings be upon her, the impact of poets, eulogists, artists, and cultural creators, and the weight of accountability upon activists, writers, and those who speak in public. For Tabyeen is not the task of one class. It is the covenant of the aware, the awake, and the entrusted. And so we close this chapter with a prayer that we may never abandon that we have recognized, that we may never soften the truth in search of safety, and that we may rise in our own domain to become among those who clarify, who guide, and who stand firm when others fall silent. In the Quran, in Surah Hud, the chapter of Prophet Hud, 11th chapter of the Quran, verse 112, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, "So remain firm as you have been commanded, and those who turn to God with you." This is not the end. It is a pause before we rise again. In Arba'een 2025, we will resume, and we will speak of those who must speak. Please give me a salawat, and we move on to the final supplication eulogy for this series, which is titled The Blood and the Banner.
اللهم صل على
صل
محمد
على محمد وآل
محمد.
In his name, the Lord of the martyrs and the truthful. O God, send your blessings upon Muhammad and the family of Muhammad. O God, this is the day the earth stood still. This is the day swords were sharpened against the throat of your light. This is the day Husayn stood alone, his companions gone, his family slaughtered, his body wounded, his lips dry, and still he prayed, "Peace be upon the one whose jugular was severed." O my Lord, who else after him carried such sorrow with such certainty? He watched the camp burn. He saw Zainab stand amid smoke and terror. He heard the cries of the children, and still he walked to the battlefield, not as a man seeking death, but as a guide fulfilling his covenant. He was the last to fall, no one to cradle his head, no one to catch his final breath. They struck him from all sides. They severed his sacred head. They raised it upon a lance, and the angels wept. O God, how did the sun rise again after that day? How did the earth not collapse beneath the weight of its betrayal? But you did not leave his blood without a voice. You raised Zainab. She stood not with sword, but with truth. In the palace of Yazid, she proclaimed Karbala. Her words crushed thrones. Her patience shamed tyrants. I saw nothing but beauty, she said. For every sword they drew, she raised a word. For every scream they caused, she gave silence that thundered. O Master of our age, you are the continuation of this blood. You are the awaited one. You are the avenger of Husayn. How long must we wait while his head lies on no body, while his killers are praised by the blind? Where are you, O son of Zainab? Where is your cry, O avenger of Husayn? Let this mourning transform us. Let our tears become action. Let this grief become movement. Let us rise, not just to cry, but to carry his message and her mission. O God, make us among those who seek the vengeance of Husayn under the leadership of the supported Imam, and grant us the cry of Zainab, her silence and her strength that shattered swords. Tonight is not the end, it is the beginning of remembrance, the beginning of resistance, the beginning of return. Tonight we say, O Husayn, we are with you. O Zainab, your message lives in our throats. We will not forget. We will not be silent. We await your son, and we walk your path. وآخر الدعوان أن الحمد لله رب العالمين والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.